Were there any surprising findings in your research?
Yes. So the first most surprising thing is every single leader who I reached out to and asked to participate said yes. So that was interesting. Number one, it was interesting that there was such, openness to talking with us, and that when that happened, we knew we were off to a really good start. We're going to have an interesting uh, uh, set of people to work with and firms to write about. So number one, everybody said yes. Number two, there were some findings that were fascinating. I'll just give you a few examples. When we talked to John Bayliss, the chair of Kirkland and Ellis, a giant in the industry, kind of if you're writing a book that's titled Outperformers, Kirkland is going to be in there. And when we talked to John about how he goes about strategic growth, he said something that was interesting and I think is evidence of a shift among some high performing firms. He said, when we hire great laterals and teams, we never hire for their book of business. And then he paused and he said, ever. And then he described how what they do is they hire for expertise that helps the firm grow and take to the next level important existing client relationships they have. That was interesting. And as I say, that's evidence of an emerging trend among many high performing firms. So that would be the first thing that was, I didn't expect that. And I learned a lot. And I think everybody will learn a lot from reading more about that too. We talked to Neil Barr, chair of Davis Polk, also a giant in the industry. And that firm, for all of its strength and excellent performance, has gone through tremendous change. And it's part of why it's performing with so much strength. He talked about how they decided to move off their approach to compensating partners by lockstep to the system they're on now, which is different and more aligned with achieving their aspirations, allows them to be more competitive in retaining and attracting the very best people to their firm to get to where they want to go. He went through a process he describes in the book of looking at what's culture, because culture in many firms is used as kind of a shield against change. And he said part of what they started with is defining, well, what about our culture really makes it what it is and is important to us? And he distinguished culture from lockstep. Lockstep is an approach to compensation, not a culture, he describes. He then talked about how he went about building consensus and understanding the best of their culture that must be protected and what it would mean to adapt their approach to conversation to be as competitive as they needed to be in the market, and did that with great success. So that was number two, very interesting.
Mhm.
A third that I'll mention is Paul Weiss. Paul Weiss went from a firm that not that long ago was known for litigation and principally litigation. Second, not that long ago, they also went about growing a corporate practice that today is a highly competitive, one of the leading corporate practices in the top 100 firms in the world. And they did that in a relatively short amount of time. And part of getting there was changing their approach to compensation and closing compensation, not sharing with all of the equity partners what all the other equity partners make, which is something that our view is makes it much easier to run a law firm on the one hand. On the other hand, that's different culturally from what a lot of firms are used to, transparency. And so we talked about the approach of examining that issue, building consensus in a leadership team, and eventually having support to make that change, which connects with their ability to retain terrific people and attract more to build the position that the firm has today. So those are three things that I didn't know we would get that much detail on going in. And I wouldn't get hung up on the names of the firms and the people I just mentioned. The concepts are what's interesting to people because there's a lot of drivers of outperformance that conceptually apply to many firms in their competitive situation. And so those are three things I didn't expect that were fascinating to me and I hope interesting for people to read about.